Beyond the Gates spoilers tease that a question will haunt every scene that follows: has Bill been drugged by Hayley's carefully laid trap? The whisper of that possibility colors everything: every glance, every clink of glass, every quiet conversation in hallways late at night. From the first seconds the camera lingers on Bill's hand reaching for his wine to the moment the glass trembles between his fingers, an invisible current of suspicion runs through the mise-en-scène. It is a question barn of small betrayals and petty calculations: Hayley's long con, her made-up pregnancy, the phantom college fund fed with stolen pennies from Bill's accounts, and it becomes an engine that drives a domestic drama grotesquely out of scale, a heist of emotion and legality where the prize is not only money but the right to live inside Bill's life. Hayley is introduced to us not as a cartoon villain but as a woman honed by necessity into a shapeshifter. She knows how to smile in ways that disarm and how to perform dependency so convincingly that it becomes a strategy. Her fake pregnancy is the first act in a choreography of control: ultrasound scans bought off the internet, doctored messages from a clinic, a carefully rehearsed swoon at a baby shower she did not earn. The college fund, none of the more brazen details, becomes an accounting of illusion. Hayley funnels Bill's generosity into an account she claims is a nest egg for a child who does not exist, watching the balance grow like proof that her story is true. Each deposit is a breadcrumb that leads Bill to believe he is building something real. Each withdrawal, explained away as baby necessities or future tuition, is a theft wrapped in the cloth of domestic intimacy. Danny's shadow in this story is essential. She is the ghost pulling at threads of memory, the woman who once entranced Bill, who may still do so, whose return into the orbit of Bill's life sparks Hayley's rancor. Danny did not come back as a cataclysm, she returned as a soft insistence, a message that arrived in the wrong moment, a coffee shared in a bookstore aisle. But to Hayley, watching from the periphery, those small things are tectonic. She begins to narrate a story about Bill's loyalty slipping away, about his heart returning in secret. Hayley's fear of being supplanted becomes a jealous obsession that must be remedied by any means necessary. The supposed pregnancy feeds into that narrative. If she can show Bill that a child is tethering them together, he will not look for Danny. The poison plot piece that turns the film from thriller to something darker was never meant to be crude. Hayley plans it like she plans everything, with the slow, patient boredom of someone who has practiced fraud. She does not imagine a cinematic murder but a quiet incapacitation, an illness that would explain away sudden death as something tragic but inevitable. Something that would release the insurance payout while leaving Hayley looking like a grieving spouse rather than a profiteer. It's the most audacious gamble she's ever taken, more brazen than 5 years of small cons and forged signatures, because it stakes everything on a single, irreversible action. Hayley's partner in these schemes, Randy, is both a mirror and a foil. Randy embodies a kind of buffoonish bravado, someone who thinks his laughter can deflect consequence. He's been an accomplice before, cutting corners, moving money, falsifying documents, but the poison plot requires a level of cold logic he almost admires, a clean, economical final con that frees him from messy long-term obligations. Randy underestimates Bill because Randy measures other people the way he measures a ledger, by how much they can be manipulated and by what angles offer the most margin. He misses the psychological recalibrations, the human ineffable stubbornness that cannot be summed in dollars and cents. He laughs at warnings, brushes off Joey's tentative concerns, and misreads Bill as a man who can be bled dry without fighting back. Joey is the conscience, halting but relentless, the one who remembers small truths that Raj and Randy would rather forget. Joey speaks in half-sentences, eyes darting to the corners of rooms, and his admonitions register like static in the background of Hayley's plan. He warns Randy softly, not heroically, that the plan is uglier than they imagine and that Bill may be less gullible than they assume. Joey's voice is not eloquent, but it is precise. People, he says, often underplay the simple fact of attachment. Bill might love Hayley. He might be stupid and kind and stubborn in different ways. Joey's warnings hang in the air, unheeded, dismissed as the paranoia of someone on the margins, until those warnings become the hint upon which the final act swings. Bill's own arc is not that of a hapless fool, It is quieter and more complicated. He is a man who has been burned before, not only financially but by the fact of his own desire. The return of Danny frays him. He finds himself nostalgic for a life in which things were simpler, where loyalty was reciprocal and the price of being loved was not surveillance and insurance claims. Danny's presence is an invitation to doubt his choices. She reminds him of values he thought he had left behind. Yet Bill is neither a saint nor a cipher. He holds the same stubbornness that made him fall in love with Hayley in the first place, a hopeful yearning that people can be redeemed and that commitment can outpace history. That hope is both his weapon and his weakness. Hayley's campaign to poison Bill's subtlest scenes are staged with the intimacy of a heist movie. She lingers in the kitchen while he calls about work, offers to pour him a drink as if tenderness. She slips a dusty-looking powder into the rim of his glass and then feigns alarm when he coughs. The writing avoids the specifics of the substance. What matters is the moral calculation, the rehearsal of control. The film's camera lingers on the slight tremble in Hayley's hands, on the practiced smile that dissolves into anxiety as Bill slurs a word or forgets a detail. Those micro-moments are the true currency of the narrative. They build a sequence of doubt in the viewer as much as in Bill. Had he been drugged? Is he dying? Or is this merely another of Hayley's manipulations to hoax sympathy and secure a future where she can spend without scrutiny? There are scenes in which it seems that Hayley has miscalculated in the most human way possible. She wants the insurance money and the life it will buy, but she also wants to be seen as a woman who loved her husband deeply. She imagines grief as a costume and then, in private, starts to feel the weight of the role. This internal conflict humanizes her briefly. She is not only greed. She is somebody who learned to weaponize affection because society rewarded tears and punished anger in women. She understands that a widow has access to empathy and funds in ways a lonely ex-wife does not. But those humanizing moments are thin and fragile, and the deeper truth of her planned willingness to end a life for convenience cuts through any sympathy the audience might have for her. Bill's discovery of the medicine or powder follows a chain of small mistakes. He is not suddenly enlightened. Instead, his suspicion accrues through a montage of details: the missing pill bottle in the bathroom, a hospital leaflet lying in the trash that Hayley forgot to destroy, a faint, metallic taste in his mouth one morning. Bill's attention to these tiny anomalies is not presented as detective genius but as an instinctive self-preservation. He remembers the empty promises, the awkward mismatches in bank statements, Danny's quiet warnings, and Joey's nervous admonitions. The film gives him space to assemble doubt the way a person stitches together a torn photograph carefully, painfully, and with a mounting sense of loss. A pivotal sequence unfolds around a dinner an evening that was meant to be ordinary. The household is full of light filtered through curtains, the sound of somebody polishing glassware, the television murmuring in another room. Hayley moves with the easy grace of someone who thinks they have already won. Randy texts her updates with the breathless confidence of an accomplice who believes in his own invincibility. Then Bill, in a moment of quiet observation, notices a faint residue at the bottom of his glass. He lifts it to the light and sees that small fleck, like dust but not dust. The camera does not dramatize the find with music, it lets the silence do the work. Bill's face becomes an open ledger, calculating, refusing to panic, cataloging what will become evidence. To force Hayley to reveal the truth, the screenplay chooses a surreal twist of moral theater. Bill decides to make Hayley drink from the same glass. The idea is not simply retributive, it is theatrical. If Hayley will not confess, then her action must be mirrored back to her. In that mirrored act, the script explores power and shame. Hayley stands at the threshold of her own trap, forced to confront the literal taste of her plan. If she refuses, then Bill will know without proof. If she drinks, then she risks ingesting what she intended for him. The audience watches, breathless, as her face negotiates panic, pride, and the instinct to survive. This is where the film leans into moral ambiguity. It is not a matter of black and white guilt, it is a tableau of people who have eroded one another through years of small cons, until only one combustible act remains. Randy's complacency is his fatal flaw. He sees Bill as slow, sentimentally easy to manipulate and therefore a safe target for the final con. But Randy's miscalculation is not only emotional, it is procedural. He and Hayley have become sloppy. Small traces of their fraud remain in unexpected places: an email thread archived with incriminating subject lines, a bank notification sent to an old email account, an eyewitness Joey Woe has a conscience and a memory. The film layers these elements like a slow-building storm. Randy's laughter sounds increasingly hollow as Bill's quiet observations compound. The juxtaposition of Randy's bravado and his increasing unease creates the tension for the second half of the story. He will not be punished immediately. The narrative prefers a longer arc of control unraveling. Bill's strategy is not to publicly accuse but to gather. He becomes a patient predator, not the kind who will physically attack, but one who will strip away Hayley's options. He starts to watch bank statements, intercepts mail, tracks phone records, and, crucially, engages the law in a way that is methodical rather than vengeful. He does not seek immediate satisfaction. Instead, he builds a case. This is a different kind of power, one rooted in systems, in paperwork, and in the slow collapse of a fabricated life. Bill's actions are described without glamour. There are no car chases, no shouting matches, only the quiet turning of ledgers and the interrogation of small facts until they become undeniable. Hayley's psyche during this unraveling is a study in increasing fracture. At first she meets Bill's scrutiny with ridicule. Woe would believe the idea that she would go so far. But as the net tightens, she becomes smaller in scenes where she had been expansively deceitful. Her stagecraft fails in private. She misplaces a fake medical bill. She snaps at Randy over minor issues, and worst of all, she starts to believe her own lies in certain moments, confusing performed tenderness with real affection. Those moments are the most dangerous when a liar begins to adopt the mask she wears. The film allows us to see the erosion not as poetic justice but as the slow, humiliating erosion of a life built on sand. Danny's re-entry into the narrative complicates things in ways that are less about romance and more about mirror images. She watches the unraveling of Hayley with a combination of pity and protective rage, not because she wants Bill back for possessive reasons, but because she recognizes a pattern she has seen before: women who weaponize intimacy to survive. Danny's warnings earlier were practical. Now, as Bill's ally in a different mode, she becomes a witness and, in quiet moments, a confessor. She speaks to Bill about boundaries and memory and the danger of mistaking kindness for naivety. Their conversations are not titillating or sensational, they are reparative and honest, suggesting that the film is interested in repair as much as retribution. The stakes escalate as Hayley and Randy decide to take more risks. They accelerate their spending, convinced that victory is imminent. There is a scene in which Hayley shops for a dress for the funeral she imagines, a dress that is more about the performance of grief than about mourning. The cost of that dress and the purchases that follow are not only monetary, they are symbolic. Every new luxury becomes a nail in the coffin of their plausible deniability. The film uses these purchases to paint a picture of short-term gratification, the ease of indulging in ill-gotten funds while the law and morality close in like water filling a basin. Bill's discovery of the powder, his strategic forcing of Hayley to drink, and the subsequent fallout are not the end of the story, they are the fulcrum. The audience is left standing at a precipice. Will Hayley confess? Will Randy panic and flee? Will Joey's conscience spur him to turn over evidence? The screenplay avoids revealing the end of these threads immediately. It carefully strings them into the second half of the story, where consequences will be clarified and the moral ledger balanced. For now, the script revels in a slow burn approach, the idea that the most terrible betrayals are not dramatic at first glance but accumulate through tiny, consequential choices. Stylistically, the film weaves its tension through domestic textures, the clatter of dishes, the hum of the refrigerator, the whisper of curtains. There is an intimacy to the cinematography that makes the viewer complicit. You look at Bill and worry, you watch Hayley and understand why she would become capable of such things. The narrative refuses easy judgment. Instead, it asks us to feel the gravity of choices. It wants us to ask whether desperation can ever fully explain betrayal and whether loyalty is a currency that can be bought back once spent. Thematically, The story becomes a meditation on how money distorts intimacy. Hayley's original motive: is fear of abandonment, the desire for security, the need to be seen or relatable in small doses. The moral failing is not in wanting security, it is in choosing a path that erases another person to get it. The film interrogates how systems, insurance policies, bank accounts, social expectations can be retooled as instruments of manipulation. Bill's quiet resistance shows another possibility: the use of institutions to restore balance, to create an account of truth that is harder to erase than the lies Hayley has built. As tensions rise, alliances shift. Joey's unease morphs into decisive action as he confronts Randy with evidence he cannot ignore. Danny becomes not a romantic rival but a crucial ally who understands the cost of small cons and who will not let Bill stand alone. The inner circle fractures under pressure. Randy, once loud and confident, starts to misplace his bravado. He makes errors that cascade: texts sent to the wrong person, an overheard conversation that becomes a recorded admission, a deposit slip that reappears in an unexpected place. The film uses these human failings to show how easily a con collapses when it depends on too many variables. In the final sequences of this opening act, tension tightens to a wire. Bill holds evidence like a lit match, knowing that one wrong move could ignite catastrophe. Hayley, trapped in her own performance, alternates between calculated coolness and moments of raw fear. Randy's swagger is hollowing out. Joey's conscience presses into the narrative like a needle, stitching together loose ends into a pattern that is difficult to deny. The question that began as a whisper, "Did Hayley poison Bill?" has moved into the world of demonstrable facts. But the truth is still contingent on choices yet to be made. The story leaves us in a liminal space where retribution is possible but not inevitable, where the thin thread between justice and revenge is about to be tested. The end of this section is not an ending at all, it is a careful pause before the reckoning, the moment where every small decision made in deceit must meet its consequence. The household, once a daily theater of petty deceptions, now hums with a more dangerous electricity. Evidence accumulates in silent places: a fingerprint marked on a wine glass, metadata from an email, a withdrawal logged against the facade of a baby registry. It is Bill who first recognizes the pattern as more than cruelty, it is a crime. He begins to act with the patient ferocity of someone who will not let a life be stolen without accounting. The next moves are deliberate, methodical, and free of melodrama. He files reports, prints statements, and calls the insurance company with a calm voice that carries the weight of impending truth. Hayley watches all of this and performs grief with such skill that those who have not seen the ledger and the hidden messages believe her. But in hushed private moments she frays her performance slips into panic. Randy, who once laughed at consequences, begins to plan escape routes that look less confident with each passing day. Hayley's plan to have Bill drink is a gamble with a moral thickness. If he drinks and becomes ill, the insurance payout will seem a tragic accident. If he discovers the tampering and forces her to face it, the tableau will flip. When Bill catches the residue at the bottom of the glass, the scene tightens into a chamber of truth. Bill does not explode with rage. He shows Hayley the glass and offers her a choice of spectacle: confess and keep the slow, consuming shame, or prove her bravery by drinking the same chalice. The gambit is a psychological masterstroke: public shaming turned inward. Hayley, who has grown accustomed to outward manipulation, finds herself trapped by her own machinations. The camera lingers on her internal negotiation, the small ticks of a woman deciding whether survival is worth the taste of her own plan. Randy's slip is rapid and revealing. He sends a celebratory text meant for Hayley to Joey by mistake, and in that misdirected message lays a confession tinged with bravado, plans, dates, amounts. Joey, whose conscience has been sorely tested, now holds the key. He can choose to bury the truth and keep his place in the circle, or he can take the high road, turn over the messages, collaborate with Bill, and watch the house of cards collapse. Joey's decision is not dramatized as heroic, rather it is the small, honest thing that contrasts with the other's escalating lies. He chooses to help Bill, and his eyes when he meets Bills are not filled with guilt but with the weary relief of someone who finally steps off a moving sidewalk toward a steadier ground. Danny's role evolves into more than a specter. She becomes a quiet strategist. She offers to accompany Bill to meetings, to sit in on counseling sessions under the pretense of support, and to be a witness when Hayley tries to spin her stories. Danny's presence complicates the emotional geography of the household. She is not there to seduce but to steady, yet her proximity causes Hayley to reveal more of herself. Jealousy, which had been a private take, turns public in micro-conflicts. Hayley misreads a smile, sees Lionel the dog wag a certain way, assumes conspiracy in the wrong place. These small combustions are what finally breaks the back of the con. Petty inconsistencies that, when multiplied, create a proof that no single lie can withstand. The second half of the story becomes less about the mechanics of stealing and more about the ethics of punishment. Bill is not a caricature of righteous fury. He is deliberate, aiming to deprive Hayley of the tools she used to manipulate him. He does not want to be the same as her. He wants restitution, not revenge. He uses the law, not a showdown, to undo what was done. This choice complicates the film in a humane way. It asks whether justice is best served by inflicting pain or by restoring order. Bill chooses the latter, but the film allows the question to linger: what will happen to people who caused suffering when they must live with the consequences in a world without theatrical vengeance? Hayley's unraveling is not cinematic in the traditional sense. There are no gunshots, no dramatic escapes. Instead, the film follows the erosion: bank accounts frozen, credit lines cut off, friends who once believed her retracting support. More devastating than the financial ruin is the social detritus. Neighbors who once waved now avert their eyes, monthly brunches stop happening, and the imagined cradle at the end of the hallway becomes an emblem of humiliation rather than hope. Hayley's luxury dissolves into the legalities of subpoenas and restraining orders. Her narrative power, always derived from performance, begins to crack when confronted with documents and testimony. The movie lingers on these small humiliations to show that the cost of deception is not only financial but social and spiritual. Randy, seeing the oxygen go out of the plan, chooses flight. He attempts to leave town with a duffel bag and a map, taking only what he thinks he can spend quickly. His escape is clumsy, caught on traffic cameras and a waiter's memory of a late-night withdrawal at an ATM. The miscalculation reveals Randy's shallow understanding of consequence. She could not foresee that a city with cameras and digital trails would be his undoing. His arrest is not cinematic but bureaucratic: a phone call, a fingerprint, and a location ping that betrays his route. The film treats his capture with a cold procedural cleanliness that makes it more satisfying than a shootout ever could be, because it underscores the theme: in a world run by paper trails and surveillance, lies are less durable than once thought. Hayley's fate is more complex. When confronted with the evidence, she does not immediately crumble into confession. Instead, she re-enters her performative mode with a champion's finesse: the worried wife, the bewildered partner. Her legal counsel spins narratives about psychopathy and coercion, about how Randy was the mastermind and she a unwilling accomplice. The courtroom sequences, if there are any, are not telegraphed. Rather, the film keeps them domestic, opting to show the legal stranglehold through letters and the slow blacking out of assets. Yet the moral stakes intensify. Members of Hayley's family, if any, appear, are forced to reckon with whether the woman they love has done the unthinkable. Those close to her find themselves in the gray area between denial and the need for accountability. Bill's own moral clarity is tested when Hayley's defense tries to paint him as abusive or complicit, flipping the narrative to suggest that he may benefit from Hayley's death or that his accusations are a component of a messy divorce strategy. The film resists cheap turns by letting Bill be vulnerable. He is willing to testify to the truth without grandstanding. His testimony is not an entertainment for a watching crowd but a quiet reckoning. He recounts the deposits, the fake sonograms, the way he looked at his wife in the kitchen when a glass trembled between them. The film captures this with patience, a man dismantling a marriage not with screams but with facts. The emotional crux arrives when Hayley, backed into a corner, reveals a truth that is almost banal in its intimacy. She was not born a monster but was shaped into one by the paucity of options she perceived. She speaks of nights without money, of a mother who taught her to survive by any means necessary, of a world that seemed to reward those willing to be cruel. This confession is not an excuse but a context away for the audience to understand the architecture of her choices. The film treats this with nuance. It does not absolve her, but it refuses to reduce her to a cartoon villain. Instead, Hayley is rendered as a person who made a monstrous choice for reasons that are themselves disturbingly human. As legal and social consequences tighten, the scene shifts to moments of intimate reckoning. Bill, Danny, and Joey sit in a kitchen that is no longer warm. They talk about what it means to rebuild trust, about whether Bill can ever open his life to someone again, and whether Danny wants to be part of a life remade from the rubble. Their conversation is not about winning. It is about what it takes to live honestly after betrayal. The film gives space to the quiet possibility of repair without forcing it into a tidy resolution. The audience sees that the aftermath of manipulation can be slow and painstaking but also capable of leading to a more honest, if smaller, life. Hayley's eventual exposure, whether through confession or through the slow tightening of legal ropes, serves as a reckoning for all involved. Randy's arrest, Joey's moral choice, Danny's quiet strength, and Bill's methodical pursuit of truth coalesce into a conclusion that the film has earned: consequences for deception, yes, but also an interrogation of how we make the vulnerable into villains. The second half does not end in a flourish. It ends with a room emptied of one person and the survivors left to consider what remains. There is no triumphant coronation for Bill. There is instead a tired relief and the slow work of undoing what was done. The last image in this segment is small and domestic: an empty high chair tucked away, a ledger closed, and a man who has learned that vigilance, not romance, will protect him in the messy arithmetic of love and money.